We are anticipating more parent traffic with parents bringing their kids to school and picking them up. So we're going to make some changes to our drop-off and pick-up. Families will be able to utilize this area as drop-off, as well as the drop-off lane on Branch Street. We're shifting our bus drop-offs to the no parking area just beyond those trees. That will also help us utilize other entrances into the building. Traditionally, we've only come in to the front door. We'll be utilizing all 3 front entrances and be able to spread kids out as they get dropped off in the morning, whether it's by bus or by car. Pickup will run a little differently. Our pickup will only be in here, in this lane, and we'll be utilizing a process similar to how we had done the supply pickup in the spring, where staff will be radioing. We'll be bringing kids up to get in the cars to try to speed the process, and there'll be a certain area only where kids can get in and out of vehicles to do that safely. Buses will load down in that area as well, at the same area that they dropped off. Any positive cases or questionable cases with students during the day, this would be the isolation room. It can be completely closed off from other staff in the office. This is the area that we've designated if students did need to come in for any other nursing care with our nurse assistant. That's been created within the office space. And you'll see the plexiglass that's been installed in the front office, as well as markings for anyone who would come in to maintain the social distancing, as well as hand sanitizers, automatic hand sanitizers that have been added in our front office, as well as entry when you walk into the school. Throughout the school, you'll see reminder signs that we'll have available in Spanish and English for students. And more importantly, there'll be procedures as part of our PBIS for when kids return that will start teaching to kids via Seesaw or through virtually, so that when they come in the building, they'll already be familiar with what some of those procedures will be, as far as hand washing, hand sanitizing, social distancing, all of those other pieces that are just will be a part of the kids' day, and all those reminders that staff will be giving to kids. We are installing more bottle fillers. All water faucet or fountains will not be able to be accessed, and have added cups for students to use as well for drinks, and we'll be encouraging water bottles as well. Student lockers will be designated, and they'll alternate based on which cohort they're in. And students will also be going to their socially distanced area in their classroom to remove jackets and hats, mittens, things like that, and then on a staggered way be hanging them up. So even within the hallway, we are taking extra measures that kids aren't spending a lot of time undressing out of winter gear without social distancing. To help with contact tracing, we'll have a clipboard at the front of each classroom, so that any staff who's not regularly scheduled to be a part of that classroom, if they're coming in, so somebody like me, if I were to spend time in a classroom, maybe doing observations or something, I would sign in there so that we would know any staff member who entered that space. So this is a model classroom that we have set up, and you'll see a couple things. Each child will have their own book box or material box, and then own supplies. So we'll not be needing to share anything. There will be, depending on the space and the size of the tables, This shows where two students would be sharing a table, and we have all the kids facing the same direction towards the computer display. And we've also allowed space for the teacher to be at the computer and still maintaining 6-foot social distancing with all students. One thing that we will also be adding when they come in, we'll have vinyl spots that will be on the floor that will show where kids can be standing up and maybe taking a wiggle break or doing some of those things, and so they're constantly maintaining those that 6-foot social distancing. So it'll be very clearly marked in the classrooms, ways that we can maintain the 6 feet.
Hi, I wanted to just talk a little bit about how we're ensuring that we have great indoor air quality when our students return. In order to prepare all of our buildings, including Northside, we brought in a third-party company to recommission all of our buildings, which means that they start at our HVAC units and check all of the equipment and lines all the way down to each of the rooms. And when they walk out the door and they have everything that needs to be addressed, it means that our building and the systems have been ensured that they are running based on how they were designed, and that we have the right amount of air exchanges that are happening in each of our rooms. In addition, we are doing fresh air flushing 2 hours before occupancy and 2 hours after occupancy, which is a process in which we open up the system to allow a significant amount of fresh air to come into the building and be recirculated and filtered throughout the building. When students and staff are in the buildings, the system will automatically adjust to bring in fresh air, so that even in buildings like Northside, where we don't necessarily have windows in all the rooms, the system is pulling air in through our air handling units and is being recirculated and filtered as needed throughout the day.
In this video, we're going to discuss the school bus as it relates to the COVID outbreak, and how we as a department have created protocols for both students and drivers to safely transport students to and from schools once we return to face-to-face instruction. On board, you'll see the driver area. Drivers will be expected to wipe down and sanitize their driver area at the end of each route. So when they drop at school in the morning, they will then wipe down their driver area, the handrails, the dash, as well as these first front seat backs. They will then also spray the bus down as they proceed to the back, and then spray on this way coming forward as well. So they're catching front and back. We will also have personal protective equipment available for students that may or may not have that when they get to the bus stop in the morning. Our plan is that every child will get a ride and will get transported to school. When a student comes on board the bus, they will have an assigned seat, which is based off of the row numbers that you see that run along the sides of the top rail of the bus. Students will be seated accordingly, loading from the back of the bus to the front in order of the bus stops on their route. Family members will be seated together, and we will try to maintain social distancing as much as possible for other students, but we need to understand the fact that with the numbers that may or may not ride will impact the number assigned to seats. Ultimately, we want to limit that to a maximum of 2 students per seat. Unless it's family, then we will go 3 to a seat. But again, that is dependent on what our ridership numbers look like. Windows will not be allowed to be open. They will need to remain closed. Drivers may open their emergency hatch vent as a means to ventilate the bus and in order for heat to circulate appropriately. Incidents or issues as it relates to maintaining social distancing or maintaining parameters on the bus, safety protocols, failure to comply with wearing a mask, we will follow up accordingly with school staff and administration. If an emergency were to break out on the bus or a child were to become ill, the plan is to immediately have the bus pull over, have the child come to the front of the bus. We would then head to school immediately. We would notify school ahead of time that we had a sick child on board, that there was a potential for contamination. We would then dispatch a second bus to finish or complete the route if it was not finished already. Once school staff and personnel meet the bus with the child that's ill, and that student and other students on board are handled appropriately by staff and checked into school, that bus will immediately return to transportation and go through a thorough sanitization process. And you'll see later in this video, Cody will address what that deep cleaning and sanitation process looks like. Once the bus is finished at school and is going to go back to base or return on a second route, as we talked about, there is that wipe down procedure that they are expected to do. We also have them with their computerized tablets, a process where they are required to touch with their tablet certain pucks that are located on the bus that are part of our sanitization procedure. This again ensures that those procedures are being followed, and it also ensures that they are being done correctly and after each route.
Each bus is equipped with what we call a bus sanitizing kit. Within the bucket, we have all of these. We have alpha HP disinfectant, 10 adult size masks, 10 kid size masks, a package of Derm Essentials wipes, 5 pairs of XL adult size gloves, as well as a stack of towels and a roll of trash can liners. And so after each route, on our tablets here, once kids have left the bus, each driver has to do a bus disinfection inspection, and it's all controlled electronically and monitored electronically. So we first have to scan so it knows which bus we're in, enter the mileage, and then it gives you the 3 zones of which you're supposed to clean. When we do a thorough cleaning, our alpha HP disinfectant, and we walk to the back of the bus, every seat needs to be sprayed very generously with the disinfectant, and it needs to stay moist to the touch for 3 minutes. Being a vinyl seat, it is very easy to keep it moist, and so when you're walking to the back of the bus, you hit the seat backs and the tops. Once we're at the back of the bus is when we scan our bus disinfection puck. That now has guaranteed me that I am there, and it is also time stamped. So then on your, excuse me, on the way back forward, you focus on the seat backs and seat bottoms. Again, applying a generous amount of the disinfectant because it needs to stay moist to the touch for 3 minutes. You can see that this area is all very damp, and that is the goal we're trying to achieve, is to make sure that this stays on there and stays damp for 3 minutes. We have completed that task is when we scan the next bus disinfection puck, and we use the Derm Essentials wipes to wipe down the entire driver's area. So you would wipe your shifter, your steering wheel, anything that you have touched, your microphones. Also, again, you'll notice how it's staying damp. You wipe down your dashboard, all of these areas, and you'll notice too, it shows so the driver can see what they're being expected to clean. So we have done that, so we mark OK. Our final area, so we scan that, we submit the report, dock our tablet, and then on the way out, make sure to wipe down the handrails. And with elementary age kids, we really stress to just wipe these areas, because when they're getting into the bus, they're touching these areas. So you just want to everything nice and wet. And then you exit the bus. This is our bus disinfection tracking software, where we can see that I just completed a bus disinfection. It took 4 minutes and 10 seconds to do that. And that has already shown up in the minute and a half since I've gotten off the bus.
That's about it for the general protocols as it relates to transportation of students. And we look forward to seeing students and staff when we return to face-to-face instruction. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Danielle Kurbacek, the Health Services Coordinator for the Middleton-Cross Plains School District. I'm going to go over a few safety precautions that we've put in place for students returning to the building, as well as staff that are already working in the building. First of all, the Health Services Department worked hard to put together a prevention and response document that is meant for families, students, and staff to review as needed to understand what our district has done to keep everybody safe. Before anyone is allowed to enter our buildings, they need to check themselves for COVID-19 symptoms. If they have any symptoms, they should not enter the buildings and should reach out to either their supervisor or building principal to learn what to do next. Individuals that have been around someone that has tested positive for COVID-19 should not enter any of the buildings and need to follow all Public Health Madison Dane County guidance provided. Before students enter the building, families should understand the expectations students have before they return to the building. All students will be asked to wear masks at all times while inside the building. Masks can be provided if needed. However, we are asking families to have students come or arrive to the school or on the school bus wearing a mask, and if possible, send a backup mask. Masks will be worn during recess and will only be allowed to be taken off if they are soiled or if students are eating or drinking. When students enter a building, they need to maintain social distancing, which is 6 feet apart from all others. They also are not allowed to touch any other individuals, such as high fives or hugs. Signs have been posted throughout the building reminding everybody to maintain a 6-foot distance. Students will be asked to wash their hands frequently. There is either hand washing sinks in the classroom, or students will be allowed to use restrooms to wash their hands. There's also hand sanitizing stations at all entry points of the building. The district has also provided classrooms hand sanitizing bottles in their rooms if needed for students and staff to use. Students will be asked to wash their hands before and after eating, in addition to after playing outside at recess. The water fountains for now have been turned off, but the bottle filling stations are still open. If possible, please send students to school with their own water bottles so they can use the bottle filling stations. If water bottles are not available, cups have been provided next to the bottle fillers. Some students will be eating breakfast and/or lunch in the classroom. To keep other students safe, every student will have their own identified space to eat, and they will be eating and touching only their items provided. Students will be responsible for picking up their own food and disposing of it. Classroom teachers will help wipe down the areas after eating. Multi-stall bathrooms will be open in the building. However, some stalls and/or urinals will be closed. The handicap stalls will all remain open, and every other stall will be closed for student safety. Teachers will ask students to take their turns in the bathroom and to wait while washing hands so they maintain social distancing. When students return to in-person learning in the classroom, teachers will be reviewing all of this information with students, going through a slideshow that highlights all of these points. Some staff may be required to wear additional PPE depending on the tasks they will be doing. There is a document provided that is for staff to review that explains when additional PPE may be needed depending on a task. If additional PPE is needed, they are asked to reach out to their supervisor, who will go through the proper channels to get them the PPE. There's also information provided to staff on how to correctly put on and take off PPE. There is also specific requirements on how to reuse PPE sent out by the CDC and Public Health Madison, Dane County. School health offices will be looking a little bit different now. Every school has an identified clean room or area and an isolation room. Clean rooms and areas in the buildings are identified for healthy visits, meaning where students may take medication, they may be seen for physical injuries, or receive daily care such as diabetic care or blood pressure checks. Health office staff will only be wearing face coverings in the clean area. All schools have an identified isolation room that will be used for students or staff exhibiting COVID-19 symptoms. Each building's isolation room has an air purifier in it and is a closed-door room. Following CDC and Public Health Madison Dane County guidance, students exhibiting any of the following symptoms will be required to use the isolation room until a parent or guardian or someone they have identified can come and pick them up. If students have one of the following, they will be required to go in the room: a cough, shortness of breath, or difficulty breathing, a new loss of taste or smell, or a fever. If students have two of the following, they are also required to use the isolation room: nausea or vomiting, diarrhea, headache, fatigue, muscle or body aches, or a sore throat. Anyone that has been asked to go in the isolation room will need to wear a mask and must maintain social distancing whenever possible. Health office staff will keep a log of individuals that have used the isolation room so we can contact trace if needed. Before health office staff can enter the isolation room, they must put on additional PPE to keep themselves safe, which would be a surgical mask, a face shield, a gown, and gloves. While we know some students with COVID-19 symptoms likely do not have COVID-19, per Public Health Madison, Dane County, and the CDC, they will still be required to use the isolation room. When a parent or guardian or the individual they designated to pick up their student arrives, the student will exit the building and will meet them outside to go home. Teachers have been asked to set up their classrooms in a new way to keep students and themselves safe. Every student will have their own space identified in the classroom for both eating and to keep their items. Depending on the classroom they are in, they may have a table and a bin to keep their items, or they may have a desk with a cubby to keep their items. Every school and the classrooms within them have different furniture and different setups. Because all classrooms and the materials within them are different, classroom teachers have been asked to get creative and set up a classroom that works for them and their space. This means some students in one classroom may look a little bit different in how they function and what they use compared to the classroom next to them. All student spaces will be 6 feet apart. Classroom teachers have been asked to wipe down common surfaces and frequently used items. Shared items have been removed from the classroom, and if items that were previously shared are still being used, such as a Lego set, one student can use that set and they will sit aside for 24 hours per Public Health Madison Dane County requirements to kill any germs before another student can use them. Again, students will be required to wear face masks at all times. Teachers will be also wearing face masks and will be given the option of wearing a face shield if they would like. Since students eating in the classroom is a new plan for many, it is very important that teachers understand how to keep our students with food allergies safe. Teachers have been asked to communicate with parents the food allergies identified in their classroom. Teachers will be encouraging parents to not send in foods containing the food allergies identified in their classroom. It is not required, but it will be asked to help keep students safe. Following Public Health Madison Dane County guidelines, cohorts will not be mixing, meaning classrooms will be kept separate from others, recess time included. While students are outside at recess, they will be required to keep their masks on. For all recesses, classrooms will have locations that have been identified specifically for that classroom outside for them to use. This helps to keep classrooms from mixing and keeping our students safe. A change for teachers and students is teachers will be helping students with minor illness and injuries in the classroom rather than sending them to the health office. The reason for this is to help reduce the number of students and individuals in the health office that may have COVID-19 symptoms. The Wisconsin Department of Public Instruction released flowcharts for teachers to follow so they can help students in the classroom. Those flowcharts include bleeding, blisters, bruises, cuts, headaches, nose injuries, nosebleeds, general not feeling well, sore throat, and stomach pains. In the past, some students would come to the health office to rest or lay down just because they were not feeling well. Fortunately, this is no longer an option, as the clean area does not have a cot to lie down and the isolation room is truly used for only individuals exhibiting COVID-19 symptoms. Prior to any students coming down to the health office, they will need to be called on by the classroom teacher, unless they have a standing appointment for medication administration or other visits. If a student is not feeling well in the classroom and is possibly exhibiting COVID-19 symptoms, a teacher will be asked to call down to the health office first prior to sending the student. The student will be asked to pick up their belongings to go home and then arrive to the health office. Calling down to the health office prior to sending a student with possible COVID symptoms is important, as it gives the health office staff time to put on appropriate PPE to keep themselves safe. Health office staff will still be available to respond to emergencies in the building. One big change is when students will be allowed to return to school after being sick. Our district is following the Public Health Madison Dane County Exclusion Chart when determining return to school dates after being ill. Individual cases and scenarios will vary, and that's where the Public Health Madison Dane County Exclusion Chart helps us out. It's strongly recommended that all staff and families review the exclusion chart prior to sending their students to school, so they know what might be required of them should their student become ill or is identified as a close contact. The exclusion chart does include sibling or household contact requirements and when they are required to quarantine or isolate as well. When a COVID team member identifies a new positive case, they will call that individual, whether it's a staff or the parent or guardian of a student that has tested positive, to gather information. A COVID team member will work with the COVID positive individual to determine the dates they were considered infectious while on school property. They will then review those dates and go through a series of questions such as what rooms did they use, where did they eat lunch, and other questions related to their day to determine who might be considered a close contact. They then determine the earliest return to work or school date for that individual. After gathering information about the COVID positive case, they will then reach out to any close contacts that have been identified from the case investigation. Per Public Health Madison Dane County, close contacts are defined as any individuals that came within 6 feet of a COVID positive individual for 15 minutes or more in a day, regardless of wearing a mask, not wearing a mask, being indoors, or being outdoors. As we are following the definition of a close contact provided by Public Health Madison Dane County, this does mean that some staff members or students that were around or in the same room as an individual that tested positive for COVID-19 will not be considered a close contact. This means some staff or students that were around the individual who tested positive may have been in the same room or with them for over 15 minutes. However, they were not within 6 feet of the individual, meaning they were not considered a close contact at this time. A COVID team member will reach out to anybody who has been identified as a close contact and will notify them that they are required to quarantine for 14 days. If the close contact is a staff member, the COVID team member will reach out to their supervisor and employee benefits to notify them. And if the close contact is a student, the COVID team member will reach out to the building principal and the health office to notify them of the students. Once all close contacts have been notified, a building-wide notification letter will be sent out to all families and staff within that building, notifying them that someone tested positive and was in the building while they were considered infectious. As we are required to follow HIPAA and FERPA guidelines, students and/or staff who have tested positive will not be identified or shared with others. A COVID team member will notify facilities management of any specific rooms or areas located within the building the COVID positive individual used while considered infectious. Those areas will be deep cleaned by custodial staff and ready to use for others. After all close contacts have been notified, the building staff and students have been notified, a COVID team member will then reach out to the Public Health Madison Dane County assigned liaison to report all case information, including who tested positive and who was considered a close contact. This information is then uploaded into the Wisconsin Department of Health Services database. The district's assigned Public Health Madison Dane County liaison is helping us track cases and will help us identify any patterns and notify us if we need to close a building. The district's COVID dashboard will be automatically updated based on these numbers. Depending on the situation, our district may need to close a building if we do not have enough staff in it to safely run the school. Coming soon, the district will provide staff and families a phone number and a district email to report any COVID positive cases or close contacts. The district COVID-19 planning team continuously meets with Public Health Madison Dane County to go over any updates and work on making sure our practices are keeping our students and staff safe.